Do you think London is a good biking city?
I think it's getting there.
We're a bike-friendly city for sure.
And it definitely has gaps.
Hi everyone, my name's Emily February. I'm also known as Ranger M. I'm an environmental educator and communicator, and I get to talk to a lot of different people about all things nature and conservation. I love to knowledge share, and that's what I want to do with you. So come on, let's go learn with Ranger M. Today we're going to talk about active transportation, and I can think of a better backdrop than the Thames Valley Parkway, or the TVP, which is the City of London's primary multi-use recreational trail, and it's over 40 kilometers long. So when we normally think about our towns and cities and how they can be more environmentally friendly, we think of recycling, energy use, individual actions, and also transportation. The transportation sector in Canada connects people and businesses through the movement of goods and services that is vital for our economy, our society, and our environment. However, in Canada, transportation is one of the biggest contributors to air pollution. Globally, it accounts for almost 15 to 20% of emissions each year because of the combustion of fossil fuels it takes to move cars, trucks, planes, and any other automotive vehicle. One solution is participating in active transportation, or the act of using your own power to move, such as cycling or walking. Today I'm going to talk to 3 people about cycling in the City of London. True or false? Transportation accounts for 10% of our global emissions, contributing to air pollution. True or false? Transportation accounts for 10% of our global emissions, contributing to air pollution. False. Transportation accounts for 15 to 20% of our global emissions. I'm here with Molly Miksa, the Executive Director of London Cycle Link. Molly, can you tell us a bit about yourself and the London Cycle Link?
Yeah, I've been the Executive Director at London Cycle Link for about 8 months, since last summer. Prior to that, I was a volunteer with them for a few years. I've been a commuter cyclist for my whole adult life, and continuing. London Cycle Link is a London-based cycling organization, so we do a few different things. We have the Squeaky Wheel Bike Co-op, where people can, which is like a do-it-yourself bike shop. So you can bring in your own bike, and staff and volunteers will help you to fix it yourself. And then we also have staff and volunteers fixing up, refurbishing donated bikes and then selling them at reasonable cost. We have our education program, which is called Ride to Thrive, focused on grade 5 and 6 education. And we work with kids to teach them not to ride a bike, but to ride safely and confidently on the road so that they can ride to school, in the hopes that that will become a lifelong accessible form of transportation. And then we do advocacy work as well at all levels of government, and sometimes outside of government too. And then community building events, so group bike rides, bike prom awards, all different kinds of stuff like that.
I was wondering if you could tell us a bit about the advocacy or the campaigning that the Link is participating in right now.
So this year is big in that we have 2 elections coming up. So we have in the summer the provincial election, and then biggest for us is municipal. So then in the fall we'll have the municipal election. What we tend to do is come up with questions, send them out to the candidates, look at going to debates and asking questions, promoting their responses around active transportation as it relates to their level of government. So that's going to be some big projects we have coming up. Climate Emergency Action Plan has recently been released by the city. So that's a super exciting document. There's lots about active transportation in that, and we certainly support it, but are really hoping that everyone adopts it widely and really takes note.
Since you brought up the city's climate plan, I'd like to ask what you think about the City of London and in terms of active transportation, and if you want to specifically dive into biking. Do you think London is a good biking city?
I think it's getting there. And there's a lot of different ways you can look at it and different perspectives. So infrastructure-wise, we're a lot better than we were 5-10 years ago. It's sometimes easy to see what isn't there, but last summer we did a group ride with newcomer families to London, and was super excited to find that so many bike lanes had been put in that weren't there prior to the pandemic, that our whole route was on bike lanes. And the families were like, wow, this is a great cycling city. This is really lovely that we can go all around downtown, from like Colborne and Dundas. Even there's a small one on William Street. So it seemed great to them. And you have like the TVP, which is lovely for biking and really special that we have in London. And then you have a lot of big streets that are not safe. Not only not safe, but car drivers are not expecting bikes. So they're not looking for us, and we're avoiding those streets. So it's sort of a cycle of not wanting to go there, not being visible, and then, you know, I think a lot of people not realizing that there are people riding bikes because they just wouldn't go on Richmond Street or Wellington or Warncliffe.
A big way to get people into biking is to kind of say that it's a good way to get to work. Like it cuts down on, obviously, gas prices, which are really skyrocketing right now.
Yeah.
And then it's like time efficient. So having those big roads that are somewhat unsafe, which could cut down on time because they're the main roads kind of thing. So I think a pushing factor would be to make those kind of safer for biking.
And there's different, you know, there are alternatives that maybe we need to consider more. For example, you know, there's some roads in London with huge, very wide sidewalks, you know, that we can put a lane on a sidewalk for cyclists and people using active transportation, where there isn't necessarily room to put it on the road. So I think to be nimble in our choices in terms of infrastructure is really beneficial and could be useful.
What would be your top recommendation for London in terms of biking?
I'll say, you know, there's what you need personally. I think selfishly, what I really notice a lot is parking. So I lived in Toronto for a long time, and what there wasn't was a lot of infrastructure. What there was a lot of ring and posts, a lot of basic bike parking. So you go, you know, to your doctor's appointment, to the store, to where your friend's house, to a party, and there was a place to safely park your bike. I mean, you can't be sure who's got what tools, but basically there was always somewhere pretty easy access to park, and I don't find that in London. So that's something that troubles me in a selfish way. I think in terms of, but I'm a confident cyclist, so, and I mostly am going around the downtown core as well, as opposed to people who live in the suburbs who don't have safe travel. So I think for trying to, or if I think of my kids, you know, the more important thing is to have them be safe. So getting separated bike lanes as a grid of separated bike lanes is super important.
Well, thanks, Molly. I just wanted to know a little bit more about the London Cycle Link, the camps that you mentioned, and how is someone to find out more, to join them? They sounded really interesting to me, and all of your programs really, but I think the ones for the kids is really cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can follow us on social media. You can email just info@londoncyclelink.ca. And then we have a newsletter called Chainmail that people can subscribe to. So we'll promote as we have camps coming up. We're also really hoping to start working with the school board. So we've been talking to the Thames Valley District School Board about going in, and we would like to make our program accessible to all grade 5 and 6 students. So yeah, look forward to that. We're really hoping to start a pilot program in the spring. It's been sort of halting because they haven't allowed even guest speakers in, but yeah, it's our goal to be in schools.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming and sharing your passion for cycling and telling us about the London Cycle Link.
Thank you so much, Emily.
Choosing a bike over a car just once a day can reduce an average citizen's carbon emissions from transport by how much? A, 25%, B, 5%, C, 65%, D, 80%. Choosing a bike over a car just once a day can reduce an average citizen's carbon emissions from transport by how much? A, 25%, B, 5%, C, 65%, D, 80%. Based on research done at the University of Oxford in 2021, choosing a bike over a car just once a day can reduce your carbon emission by approximately 65%. I'm here with Allison Miller, the Transportation Demand Management Coordinator with the City of London. Hi Allison, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Emily.
I was just wondering if you could tell us a bit about yourself and your role within the City of London.
Yeah, I'm the city's, or if you are a Londoner, I am your Transportation Demand Management Coordinator, as you said, or TDM, which essentially means it's my role to encourage Londoners not to drive or drive alone as much. So to use those other more green, sustainable options like walking, cycling, carpooling, taking transit. So that's my role within the city, and I've been at it for a long time, and I in my personal life I try to walk the talk. So you've got my bike there, and that's how I got to our interview today.
Awesome, thank you. I just wanted to talk about active transportation, more specifically cycling, and the City of London. Do you believe that the City of London is a bike city?
Definitely, we're a bike-friendly city for sure, especially when we look to our comparator municipalities and other cities. We're ahead of the curve in some cases, and we've really got a growing cycling culture and infrastructure here in London.
Yeah, I think one of the pros that came out of COVID was some people looked to biking more this last 2 years.
That's right, exactly. And we do have more and more people choosing a bicycle for transportation, also for recreation. But before COVID, we had relatively low numbers of cycling. Obviously, with COVID, that became a more realistic option for many people who had the choice. So instead of taking transit or a taxi, they got on their bike or they started to walk more and more. And we're really hoping that post-pandemic that continues and more infrastructure is in place and more programming and more supports to get people out cycling.
When you think of the City of London and the infrastructure it has for cycling, do you think there are any ways we can improve in the city?
Always. And that's the same with any municipality. I think we've done a great job in the last 5 years or so of introducing more and more cycling infrastructure, recognizing that it is a realistic way to get around in London for the economic, the health, those environmental benefits as well. But in the last 5 years, what's been interesting is the introduction of separated cycling facilities, so much like what's behind us here. And so we've started a network of those, and that's a network that will continue to grow. And it gives cyclists the option to be separated from cars, from vehicles. And for a lot of people, that's a stumbling block, and that's a challenge, is I need to remain safe, which makes sense. And so our separated cycling lanes help with that.
Do you know any of the next steps maybe that the City of London is going to take for active transportation and cycling?
Yeah, well, and actually this is good timing, because we're actually just starting up our Mobility Master Plan review. So the Mobility Master Plan looks at the city as a whole and our entire transportation system. And with the plan, we're updating it. So we're asking people, how do you currently get around? How do you need to get around or want to get around in the future? And then we take that information and we look at, well, what infrastructure, what programs, what supports do we need to put in place for that? The other plan that is just starting up is in draft format right now, is the Climate Emergency Action Plan. So that's where we're looking at the environment. So for Londoners, for the city, for businesses, what environmental actions should we be taking now that will help us in the future? And obviously that includes transportation. Personal vehicle use is it is the number one source of greenhouse gas emissions in London. So addressing transportation and making it easier for people to choose a bike for more trips is important. We are looking to hear from Londoners. If you visit getinvolved.london.ca, that's where you'll find information on both the plans, the Mobility Master Plan and the Climate Emergency Action Plan. We want to hear from cyclists. We want to hear from folks who want to cycle more, and share your ideas, share your needs, share your experiences.
Is there any programs currently that the city offers that can allow a bit more accessible access to biking, like learn to bike or anything like that from the City of London that people could participate in?
Yeah, we actually produce many videos on and provide information on our website on how to cycle safely. What I do recommend to people though is if you're new to it or if you're nervous, which is understandable, map out your route, practice the route at a time when you're not in a rush. And then talk to other cyclists, look to YouTube videos, all kinds of YouTube videos on cycling safety and how to be safe. And we also support a couple of groups in London who provide courses and on the street exercises to get you used to riding a bike.
Allison, I was wondering if you could give us any stats or anything about how many Londoners are looking to cycle or are participating already in cycling in the city.
Yeah, and we have many sources of data and information to know how people are moving around the city, including cycling, riding a bike. In 2016, our household travel survey, we surveyed a small percentage of London households to find out how they get around on a weekly basis. And from that, we found that 1.5% of trips throughout a day in London are made by bike. Now that sounds like a small number, but that actually translates to about 24,000 bike trips in a single day. Now, recognizing that is pre-pandemic. So since the pandemic, our data is showing that we're at approximately 75% of an increase in cycling in London, which is great. That includes for transportation, that also includes for recreation.
Well, that's really great to hear that more and more people are turning to cycling. I'm going to take it on myself to try and cycle more, at least walk more, to do small tasks like go grocery shopping since I live close to a grocery store and stuff like that. So thank you, Allison, for taking the time out of your day to come and talk to us about cycling and how the City of London is a bike city.
My pleasure. Get out there and ride. It's a fun activity.
The City of London offers how many kilometers of trail, bike lanes, and cycle tracks? The City of London offers how many kilometers of trail, bike lanes, and cycle tracks? There are over 350 kilometers of trail, bike lanes, and cycle tracks throughout the City of London. I'm here with Andrew Hunniford, who is the General Manager of the London Bicycle Cafe. Hi Andrew, can you tell us a bit about yourself and then also the Bicycle Cafe?
So usually I'm responsible for making sure that most of the day-to-day operations are carried out successfully, kind of thing. Because what we do here at the London Bicycle Cafe is provide bicycles and cafe service offerings to the fine folks of London, Ontario.
I always thought it was, I don't know, a play on words that you were just doing bike things here, but you actually have a cafe.
Well, we do. It's the pandemic has made things a little bit tricky at times, right? But we hope to return to full form. So this year, London Bicycle Cafe will have both bicycles and cafe offering at 320 Thames Street.
Now, can you tell us a bit about when, how, and why you became passionate about biking?
I honestly can't remember. It's been that long. I think I've always ridden a bicycle. It's always been my primary form of transportation. So I've always kind of really been there in that space kind of thing. The reason I'm the general manager of the London Bicycle Cafe now is I want to bring people to where I am and kind of along with me to this better place where we can use things like bicycles for regular transportation and everyday use. And they have all kinds of benefits for our regular lives.
Yeah, you guys here offer electric bikes or e-bikes, right?
Yeah.
Can you tell us the benefit of an e-bike or like the difference of an e-bike and a regular bike for those who might not know?
Yeah, we'd like to think that there's not a tremendous difference in that they're all bicycles, but what an e-bike does is it definitely makes it more accessible, and it's a little bit more accommodating in terms of what you want to do with a bicycle. So you have the benefit of having a mid-drive electric motor system, is what we would call. You'll hear terms like pedelectric, right? Where it's still a bicycle for us. Primarily our focus is on things that, yeah, you still have to pedal and ride with handlebars, and you're still always engaging in that act of riding a bicycle, but with the benefits of electric assistance, which just means you can do it faster, you can go further if you want, you can do it more often, you can do it earlier in life or later in life, depending, kind of thing, right? That's what the electric aspect does for us.
I wanted to ask about biking cities and what that kind of means to you, and if you think London is a good biking city.
I have two minds of this sometimes. I have always biked in London, and I think it can absolutely be a terrific biking city. And it definitely has gaps in its system that would make it accessible to, and this is important for us, people of all ages and abilities. So when we talked about what makes a bicycle city, it would be that it does have a system, and then that system moves people of all ages and abilities, no matter what. Helps them accomplish the things that they need to do, helps them get from point A to point B safely and reliable, no matter how skilled of a cyclist they are or their experience. And London definitely has a patchwork of some pieces of infrastructure that are fantastic. Some things that are coming along piecemeal, but what it lacks is really kind of that system.
What would be the main component to make it a better system in London? If you can answer that big question.
For me, at least, it's just that, like, where is the plan that says what we need is a system? What is the plan for the system? I would like to see that as a goal, to set out and deliver a system that will absolutely, enable people to move about and get what they need done.
I just want to circle back for a second to the Bicycle Cafe. You guys also offer services here? Yeah. Can you tell us a bit about that? I always get a flat tire. Can I bring my bike here?
Yeah, absolutely. Flat tires is something that we can do. Typically, flat tire is a problem that we can solve for you on site with a little bit of waiting. That's where the cafe aspect totally comes in handy. The waiting is actually quite pleasant, and especially as we expand into new locations that are going to be near the park and the Thames Valley Parkway, we hope to fix a lot of flats and things of that nature. We have a full service department, and we'd like to think of ourselves as that way, as we're a transportation service provider. So that's really important to us. We sell bicycles that people are using as transportation solutions as part of their daily lives. Not sports equipment, not necessarily recreational equipment. They use it to get to work, to get their groceries, to get their kids to school. So if there's a problem, I need to be able to solve that problem really quickly. We're fairly unique. We offer like a booking system. You would book in the morning, and we strive for like same day service, typically.
To go back to the City of London and biking, do you find, especially with the pandemic, I don't know if that's changed things, but more and more people are biking? Do you think more people are turning to active transport? I know with gas prices right now, I may do it a bit more, but do you find people are becoming more bike friendly and?
Yeah, we definitely see the demand for cycling increasing exponentially. Exponential growth is something we've all become uncomfortably familiar with over the last couple of years, but you're seeing similar trends in cycling, in that when somebody picks up an electric cargo bike and solves a lot of those problems, well, they tell two friends, and they tell two friends, and they tell two friends. We're all dealing with a lot in terms of the constraints. We're all dealing with, like you said, rising gas prices, cost of inflation, disruptions as a result of the pandemic, and then probably most importantly, the climate crisis. And some of us recognize that we are in a climate crisis, and a lot of folks have just kind of figured out that the bicycle is a really great solution to a lot of these problems, while also solving a lot of our daily problems, right? Here is a thing that I can use that helps me accomplish my goals, and by doing it, makes the world a better place.
For sure.
Yeah, lots of people are signing up for that. Data all over the place.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you for taking the time today and telling us a little bit about the cafe and bicycling in the City of London.
Thanks for coming, and thanks for asking.
This week, I challenge you to participate in active transportation. Just once, try and walk or cycle instead of driving your car. If you live in the country, I know this might be a little bit more difficult, but try if you're able to. That's all for this week. See you in nature.